Thank you for the wonderful introduction. I am very proud of being here. Actually, this is my style. No matter what I prepared for the lecture, I don't care. Something, from my heart or my mind inspired, and then I just let it come out. That's my style. So I already sent several documents to Frank and Helen, but don't depend upon it. But the question I am supposed to solve is, was Hwadu meditation practiced in Korea? Hwadu. Usually in the West it is called Zen because of the Japanese pronunciation. Zen Buddhism. There are many things to be said and many things having been published about Zen practiced in Korea. But the key word is good. These 4 Chinese characters, it is read in Korean, 불림문자. It means no letter. Just very simple, no letter. That's the slogan of Zen movement. Usually people say Zen was started in Asia about the early 6th century. A record says Bodhidharma, the founder of the Zen Buddhism, came to China 520. And then there are many stories about Bodhidharma and what Bodhidharma told. And then his successors, the second patriarch of Zen Buddhism, Hega, so many documents. But in a word, I say, 불림문자, 프리스몬지 in Japanese. Yeah, 뿌리원지 in Chinese. It means no letter. It's very simple, but many teachers or Zen masters who have taught Zen Buddhism, Hwadu Buddhism in Korea, didn't talk about that too much. Yeah. Just in a slogan, like the letter, some new merchandise, kind of trademark, something like that, and then passed. But that's not right. Yeah, we have to clarify why Zen movement, I call it movement, yeah, and then criticizing some kind of letter culture, which was very popular in the 6th century in China. Many Chinese Buddhists really studied very hard Indian Sanskrit text recently translated into Chinese. Heart Sutra or Lotus Sutra or some kind of Agama or various Indian Buddhist texts were translated since in the 2nd century AD. Yeah. But there was a movement. This was not well discussed, well known. what kind of movement it was, but a very strong movement in which, the later culture oriented Buddhist movement, Buddhist education or Buddhist practice were not right, going wrong way. So later culture is really attacked, and then Bodhidharma and his successors say no later culture, no later. So in my understanding, I need let me take a look. I need okay. So they say, don't depend upon the letter. That means don't depend upon the Buddhist Bible, Buddhist scriptures. Yeah. So Sutra, Agama, Hwadu, Lotus Sutra, etc. That's wrong way. Buddhism should be taught not depending upon the letter. In other words, not depending upon the scriptures, not depending upon the Buddhist Bibles, what was it? The directly indicating human mind, and then to discover the human nature, and then that's Buddha. You should become a Buddha. That's the famous Buddhist, Zen Buddhist slogan. Then you are supposed to know the difference between letter culture and no letter culture in Buddhist world in the 6th century or since then until now. Yeah. Usually, letter culture means the letter Buddhism. 문자 불교 in Korean. Yeah. Like a scriptural study emphasizing Buddhism. So in everywhere, not only in Korea but also China, Korea, Japan, scriptures were really respected and worshipped and studied. That's the life, the only source of life, like the Buddhist life, spiritual life. So, the importance of scripture had been emphasized everywhere. Yeah. But a group of serious Buddhist thinkers, Buddhist the teachers, saw some danger, hidden way, and then began to criticize that. But according to my reading, that kind of worry was not started by Bodhidharma, the founder of the Buddhism. It was seen earlier Bodhidharma. Yeah. For example, in the history of Buddhism, there have been organized from various Buddhist, sect denominations. Shinto, and in Japan, and in Korea, the Taebojong, Jogaejong, and in China, Hawaiian sect, and the various sects. But all of them, all of those Buddhist groups started their meeting by chanting Heart Sutra. Yeah, everywhere. Yeah, in America too, in Korea too. The Heart Sutra is big. But the Heart Sutra was first, translation of Heart Sutra was done by Kumara Jiva, and mostly early 5th century. So Bodhidharma came to China in 520, that means in the middle of 6th century. And then, but the Heart Sutra, or all those prajna parameters texts were translated by Kumara Jiva, and then that's the the 5th century. And then Heart Sutra, first sentence is done this way. In Korean, I don't know how many Koreans are here, how many Buddhists are here, I don't know. Mahavanya Paramilta Shimgya. That's the first sentence. Actually, that's the title of the text.
Yes.
Yeah. And then understanding of that sentence is this way. In Sanskrit, Mahaprajna, that means great wisdom. Mahaprajna. And next word is paramita. Paramita means arrival at the other shore. The other shore means Pure Land, the land of Buddha, Buddhist Pure Land. So people understand that the purpose of Buddhist practice is to go to the Pure Land. That means Buddha land. In other words, it can be interpreted various to get enlightenment, or you can say, according to the different denominations, it may be the land of various ways. But anyhow, it has a symbolic meaning. Paramita, paramilta. In Korean, it's pronounced paramilta. And then now almost all Buddhists chant that, and they're understanding this way. By means of obtaining, understanding great wisdom, we can arrive at Pure Land, Buddha land, Buddhist paradise. Yeah. And then Avarakita Shivara Bodhisattva, etc. About in Chinese it's 260 characters, very, very short. Yeah. In a minute or 2 minutes it can be chanted. But now this is a question I have to. This is all question I have to raise. The sentence, the title, in Buddhist hermeneutics, understanding the title of the text is very important. So every commentary of Buddhist text started of interpretation of the title. Yeah. At first, I couldn't understand why it's so important. Main text is more important than the title. Just they attached to title. I had a difficult, but I began to understand now. Title is very, very important in Buddhist hermeneutics. And then, by means of great wisdom, in terms of grammatic case, that's the instrumental case. Yeah. So great wisdom is an instrument. So by having that instrument, we can arrive at the Pure Land, arrive at the Buddha land. We can get the enlightenment. That means enlightenment. Zen Buddhists usually say enlightenment. Then look in that sentence. Look at the role of great wisdom, Mahaprajna. Is simply the kind of method, device with which you can go there. So that device, that method is not so useful, is not powerful, then you can change the method. That's the role of method. Yeah. The purpose is topia, paramita. That means arrival of the Pure Land. Not the instrument, method is not the purpose, right? That's the product, result of letter culture. Then, what's the difference between reading that, the title of the Heart Sutra according to the no-letter culture. No-letter culture means not depending upon letter, language, Bible, sutra, like commentary or the sermon, etc. Mahaprajna, that is paramita. As soon as you have a Mahaprajna, great wisdom, you are already in Buddha land. You are already in the Pure Land. You are already in the world of, the enlightenment. Mahaprajna. If you read all prajna texts carefully, you can see. I think you agree with me. Yeah. Usually, there are 600, volumes in terms of prajna text. One of the largest Mahayana Buddhist text, prajna text. Prajna means wisdom. Yeah. And then core of those 600, prajna documents, Heart Sutra is the most important. Yeah. Okay, now let me move. If you read Heart Sutra as I do, not by means of great wisdom, I will be arrived at Pure Land. I will go arrive at the kingdom of heaven. Something like that. Not that way. Mahaprajna, when we understand it, already we are in Pure Land, in the kingdom of heaven. Yeah. That's Zen. Yeah. So what is Mahaprajna? It is nothing but human being. Human being is a product of Mahaprajna. If you want to know what Mahaprajna is, in English, what great wisdom is, emphasized by the Mahayana Buddhism, look at yourself. It is within you. You are created according to the principle of Mahaprajna, great wisdom. So if you understand that, and then you are already the Pure Land, kingdom of heaven. You are already Buddha. That's the fundamentals of Buddhist teaching. Yeah, everywhere. Yeah. But now, why such a simple message is not so well understood? There have been published, translated, and interpreted Heart Sutra, many hundreds, the kinds. Yeah. In Korea, almost over 100 different translations of Heart Sutra. In Japanese, in Chinese, and in Western languages, English, etc. Numerous, the interpretation, translation and the interpretation, have been published. But always, they depend upon later culture. In this case, later culture means grammar is important. Yeah, grammar. Yeah. Buddhism started before letter was discovered. And you may think, Sung-bae Park, my name is Sung-bae Park, right? Misunderstood Buddhist culture, Buddhist history. Yeah. But if you study Buddhism carefully, and then Buddhism was not started by, Gautama Buddha, yeah, according to Buddhist theories. So everybody knows, before the birth of Shakyamuni Buddha, the founder of the Buddhism, who lived in 6th century BC in India, there were many Buddhas, numerous Buddhas existed. So 7 Buddhas in the past, or there are many documents. That means Buddhism started by, was not started, by Gautama Buddha. it was already existed. So to use in a Christian expression, probably in the beginning was the Buddha, was Buddha. Like the Gospel of John says, in the beginning was the Word. You know, he was with God, and he was the God, something etc. So such a feeling you can get there. Yeah. Okay, so now let me move. So I would like to draw your attention. This problem. We are in the later culture world. No question. You know, Christians, Buddhists, Hindu, Muslim, everywhere, communist, socialist, materialist, we are in the later culture. Yeah. Buddhist thinkers, especially in the stream of Zen Buddhism, Hwadu Buddhism, see some problem, people have, because people are attached to later culture. Yeah. But actually, human being is not the product of later culture. I have two babies, two daughters, and then, they are not the production of the later culture. And their body, the infant, and then beautiful products of the universe, So I should say, human being is a product of no letter. That means universal, or something like that. Yeah. Now, many people say Buddhism is a religion of suffering, whereas Christianity is a religion of sin. I heard that story when I was a student of theological seminary, Perkins School of Theology in Dallas, Texas. I was a student there studying Christianity. Because the Christianity emphasizes sin, and original sin. Under heaven, there is no one who is not, the sin. In the same way, in Buddhism, suffering, birth and the old age and decay was sickness and death and the suffering. Who is outside of the birth and death? Yeah, so suffering. But according to my understanding of Buddhism, right now, right here, if I emphasize both is suffering, etc., it doesn't work. The students, do not pay attention too much. Yeah. And also, if I examine the suffering I have, actually birth and death was not so strong, was not something strong giving me a suffering. Yeah. In the class, I emphasized four fundamental sufferings. That means birth, decay, or sickness, etc., etc. But in my mind, actually, I don't feel any suffering from that, frankly speaking. In that sense, I am not a Buddhist. I do not follow Buddhist teaching. Then, what is the suffering I have? I found some conflict within me. That is, I am a product of later culture, But originally, I was a product of no later culture. Yeah. So, some kind of order of the later culture and the order of no later culture are existing within me together, and then conflict. So because of this, I am suffering. So for any seekers after truth in the context of Buddhism, to eliminate the suffering, we have to pay attention to suffering, the conflict within oneself, every individual. Yeah. From the outset, my parents began to teach metta culture. Yeah. I did when I, educated my children. I did that. I saw my children. My children are now married, and I have grandchildren. And then they say, metta culture. Yeah. But the original human being is a product of no metta culture. That means universal, And then about 20 years old, or I think in my case about 18 years old, I discovered myself. And the self I had before the age of 18, around there, was not the real self. That's the self my parents educated, my teachers educated, But 18 years old, 20 years old, kind of awakening. I realized the self, I have is not the self, I have, enjoyed because of my parents and my teacher. And then that's the self, actually, self produce no metta culture. Yeah. And this, I call it sometimes universal self or natural self, not cultural, social, individual self. Yeah. Okay. Now, I would like to move to the second part, but in terms of conclusion of this talk so far, how many minutes I spent? If I am allowed to do this way, it will take about 3 or 4 hours.
Take another 15, 20 minutes? 15 to 20 minutes what?
Wow, not easy. Let's do that. And I will continue my way, no matter how long that will take, what, 2 hours or 3 hours.
Well, you can do that in your head.
Yeah. So let me give some conclusion of my talk so far. Hwadu, Korean name for Zen meditation, is designed to help us to return to the world of knowledge. Yeah. I think that's the world of God. Yeah. When I studied Christianity at the Korean School of Theology, word of God is not so, strange, very familiar. Yeah, it makes sense. So not attached to the language. Just I was looking at the object that the language indicates. Yeah. So return to the world of no letter. And then we have to be free from some kind of prison, burden, or metta culture. Yeah. We are in prison now. You don't know that. But our consciousness, according to Buddhist theory of human consciousness, there are many different consciousnesses. Ordinary consciousness, dream consciousness, and like Carl Jung's, the consciousness. How did he say? Collective unconsciousness. Yeah. But in Buddhist theory of human consciousness, it's called Alaya Vijnana. That sometimes it is called eighth consciousness, 제80, eighth consciousness. Yeah. If you are able to use eighth consciousness, then you will be free from all kinds of, sufferings and, burdens, etc., etc. And then, usually you cannot use eighth consciousness in everybody, but everybody doesn't know that. Yeah, not aware of that existence. Yeah, not able to use the eighth consciousness. Yeah, but eighth consciousness keeps working within everybody, but the people are not aware of that. Yeah. So when Carl Jung, that psychologist in Switzerland, was asked to define his term collective unconsciousness, and he said, actually, it's not easy, but if he's allowed, he said, if I'm allowed, then the closest term to explain the collective unconsciousness he's talking about is God, God. So the questioners were disappointed. You are not scientist. I don't like it. He didn't care. He was welcome or supported by others. Just he always paid attention to himself. So anyhow, so return to the world of knowledge and be free from the world of letter culture. Yeah, that's the conclusion. Now, in understanding Zen Buddhist talk, actually Zen culture is no letter culture, right? Right? No letter culture. But therefore, there are lots of strange, the sentence cannot understand, right? So Zen masters were asked by his disciples or visitors, what is Buddha? And pointing at his nose and that kind of, the communication. Yeah. That's one example. But if you examine many Zen documents, a little bit exaggeration, but I think I am right. All Zen texts are like that, because no letter culture. They do not pay attention to grammar. They do not pay attention to the causality, principle of cause and effect, or utilitarian, the analysis of anything. They didn't pay attention, and the whole purpose, the only purpose of their talking is to break the prison in which all people are attached because of the letter culture. Yeah, that's the method of doing. But now, many scholars, the interpreters, the Zen document, who says Shinto specialist? You are the Shinto No, not Shinto. Shinran. I'm sorry. Shinran. Jodo Shinshu.
There's another Shinran specialist
Jodo
here
Shinshu.
somewhere. Where is this?
And then, Dogen's works and Shinran's work and many, the good interpretation. But to help people to understand it, but understanding what? Causality. Yeah. Without causality, nothing can be really clarified. Yeah, analytical. Yeah. But the Zen Buddhist purpose is to break, to destroy such a bad habit. Yeah. That's bad habit. And then people do not believe the possibility to be free from that prison, prison of letter culture. Okay, now I invented, I don't know, I should be given such a credit. But from time to time I said I invented, but actually it has been everywhere. 몸짓 paradigm. MOM and MOMJIT. Mom means body. Momjit means in Korean is function. So you are seeing my momjit function, right? I'm speaking, you are saying. Usually people saw, heard and thought many things. But what they saw, what they heard, what they thought is not mom, but momjit. Yeah, momjit. That's the problem. So momjit is really changing, continuously changing. Yeah. So when Buddhist text says anitya, what does it mean? Changing. Anitya means changing. Yeah, impermanent, changing. That means momjit. But the mom is different, very different. So in Buddhist world, mom has two meanings. One is referring to the physical body, everybody, whole body, right? But there is another meaning in mom. That is, the universe itself, nature itself. Yeah. So every momjit, every the impermanent changes are embraced within that mom. Yeah. So these moms usually in Chinese is called Ti. Ti means, it's pronounced Ti. That means body. Yeah. Or sometimes it is translated as essence, fundamental essence. And momjit is using yung. Yung means, operation, application, or what's that? Anyhow, function. Yeah. Yes. In my mind, many ideas fighting to come out. I'm checking control. Time is limited. My friend doesn't allow me to. Anyhow, so mom has two meanings in Buddhist context. So original meaning is body, but the body has two meanings. This is body, but actually this body is a universal, entity. Yeah, universal thing. Yeah. So beyond the birth and death, this is the body. Buddhist meaning of body has such a thing. So to understand momjit paradigm, you should understand such a universal meaning of mom. Yeah. Don't be attached to the ordinary definition of mom, the body. The birth and death. It will be born, something like that. Okay. To help my student, I used a funny story of the book of Mencius, Confucianism, in which there's a funny story of a stupid farmer who went out in a rice field garden, and then he found his rice trees are shorter than others' rice trees. So he got angry and jumped into the rice field and pulled all rice trees up to make his rice tree taller than others. And then he came back home and told his wife, "Oh, I did a great job today. I made all the rice trees, our rice trees, taller than others." And the wife went out. Already his rice trees are faded down. So what's the implication of this story? The stupid farmer didn't understand the relationship between visible part of rice tree with branches and leaves and this, and then hidden underground invisible root. Yeah. So branch and root relationship with the tree. Yeah. And then the mentions emphasize the importance of the realization of the existence of root, which is invisible, hidden under the ground. But that's more important. To make your rice tree grow well, you have to really, give a fertilizer to the root and give water to the root and weeding to protect the root. And then, as a result, rice tree, visible part, the branches will become more, stronger and taller, etc., etc. So, relationship, visible appearance and invisible root. Yeah, the relationship. The same thing can be found in human being. In human being, visible part. Yeah. But in human being there is invisible part, like a root. Yeah. Actually, the purpose of Mencius was to teach his disciples to be aware of that importance of invisible part of human being. Yeah. Don't be fooled by visible part. And I began to teach at Stony Brook University since 1977, so about 35 years. And then when they evaluate me to promote my salary or etc., what they see is my monkey, visible part, like a branch side. They didn't pay attention to the hidden underground invisible part. Yeah. And also when professors, educate or help students in the same way. Only students in visible part. Some student got the A. That's a visible part, not the invisible part. Yeah. And gentle and polite and strong and then good, strongest possible. The recommendation to go to Harvard, etc., etc. But people are attached to the visible part. Yeah. So Mencius emphasized, if you fail to see invisible root part of human being, your future will be in danger. Yeah. And then they developed that idea further and further. And then your family, visible part of your family, the visible part, that wanted part. Yeah. Family. Three of them medical doctors, two of them are lawyers, and two of them were congressmen, and that visible part. But actually, that is not so important, according to the philosophy of Mencius. Yeah. More important is invisible root part called more. Yeah. And then they developed further this idea. This world, everybody think they know, what the world is, what universe is, what nature is. But that people know only visible part of the world, visible part of the nature. Yeah. They fail to see invisible root part of the world, of the nature. Yeah. What is it? Yeah. Entire universe. We know, what we know is about the visible part, 몸집 part. Then what is invisible root part of the world? Answer.
Mind.
Huh? Mind. Yeah, you can say mind. That's a Buddhist culture. But in Western culture, I say that's God. Yeah. Yeah. That's God, right? So the purpose of education is to be aware of the importance of invisible root part of everything. Not only plant, not only yourself, not only your family, not only your society, not only your group, Catholic and Buddhist and Protestant and Islam, and entire. What is invisible? What you know is only invisible, no, visible part. 몸짓 side. Yeah. So see the what's it? Invisible, hidden. Zen is Hwadu in Korean. In Korean, Zen is called Hwadu. Hwadu is actually made to help people to see invisible part of human. So, if you are able to see, or usually you are attached to here, 몸짓 world, visible part, appearance, phenomena, you are attached to it here. And then evaluate, and then giving a prize, Nobel Prize. Yeah. But actually, this part, without this part, 몸짓 it doesn't work. 몸짓 is not 몸짓. Yeah. Always 몸짓 could be 몸짓 because of 몸. Yeah. Without 몸, there's no 몸짓. Yeah. Okay. So when you examine the Zen document, I think every page, every sentence, every line, every tone, based on this idea. Yeah. Look at visible, invisible 몸 part, root part. Yeah. And then once you discover it, and then you are a being of 몸. But before the discovery, you are a being of 몸짓, appearance. Yeah. Be free from that. I think that's Zen Buddhism. I am under the tension to stop.
There is the letter culture, the no letter culture, the time culture, the no time culture. And I can compare and contrast the two of us. So we're very lucky tonight to have a respondent who is not myself to respond to this wonderful talk. And it is Professor Helen Hardacre, who is known to many of us in this room and needs no great introduction, but I'll just say a few points. Helen is the Reischauer Institute Professor of Japanese Religions and Society here at Harvard. She had been director of the Reischauer Institute from 1995 to 1998. Her research on religion focuses on a manner in which traditional doctrines and rituals are transformed and adapted in contemporary life. She concentrates on Japanese religious history in the modern period, but she's also done extensive field work on contemporary Shinto, Buddhist religious organizations, and the religious life of Japan's Korean minority. She has researched the state Shinto organization and contemporary ritualizations of abortion. Among her many, many publications, just to list a few of the books that she has published: 1984, The Religion of Japan's Korean Minority; also 1984, Lay Buddhism in Contemporary Japan; 1997, Marketing the Menacing Fetus in Japan, which won several awards; and in 2002, Religion and Society in 19th Century Japan, a study of the southern Kanto region. And her current research deals with issue of constitutional revision and its effect on religious groups in Japan. So a very capable and wide-ranging scholar who will now brilliantly respond to the
Well, I'd like to thank Professor Park for a very, very stimulating and interesting lecture, which I must say bore no visible relation to the paper that I received earlier. So it was with some trepidation that I heard him say at the beginning of his talk, "No matter what I prepared, I don't care." On the other hand, though, I have to admire his spirit and his spontaneity and the way in which he explained, in fact, the substance of the paper he had sent along, but in a much more spontaneous way that I think all of us, with whatever knowledge or feeling about religion, could readily understand. And I want to thank him for that, and also for the passion with which he spoke. He noted in something he had sent to me earlier, and he also mentioned at the beginning of his talk, that he had, in addition to his PhD in Buddhist studies, also studied Christianity at Southern Methodist University. And I felt as I was listening to him that I was in the presence of someone who combined the characteristics of the Zen master, who at any moment might hit you over the head with a stick, and the fire of a Protestant who is eager to preach a truth that he wants to communicate to others. And it's been a wonderful experience to be in the presence of such a person and to see that very remarkable combination of characteristics and experience and talent. Professor Park spoke about Zen as not letter culture. Another way it's been put is to describe it as a tradition outside the scriptures, and I think many people in this room would be aware of Buddhist problems that a master might set before a disciple. They are called in Japanese koans. I'm not sure what the Korean term would be, but I know there is one. And among the many that exist is one saying, if you meet the Buddha, kill him. And this also is another expression of the general idea that I believe Professor Park was explaining to us, which is to reject the possibility of depending on anything else for working out one's own salvation, however that might be construed. In his talk, he emphasized particularly the problem of dependence on letters, scriptures, written documents, and so on, and said that instead of that, the prescription within the Zen tradition is that one should look into one's own mind to not so much attain enlightenment as to realize that which is already there in an ideal sense. This idea of not depending upon the scriptures, one notices, however, is a little bit like the tradition of mysticism within Christianity and Western religions, in which it's said that that the ultimate truth cannot be expressed in words, yet somehow many words are needed to express that truth. And I think something of the same paradox exists within the Zen tradition, in that, of course, its own textual tradition is quite rich, and much of it is devoted to explaining the idea that one should not depend upon the scriptures or letter culture in general. As Professor Park went on to explain, of course, that's easier said than done, and just how to do that is not at all clear to most of us. Yet, I think that it must certainly be essential that one have the determination to reach that understanding, and that is how we should interpret the great devotion which students of Zen have shown over many centuries to the very great discipline necessary to somehow get beyond the constrictions of our rational way of thinking, which we necessarily use to just get through the world on a day-to-day basis. How to break through that is something that is, I guess, the fundamental question in that tradition, and one that helps us understand things like students of Zen who've been given a koan by a master, meditating deep into the night, and if their koan is, as is often the case in the Japanese tradition, the word mu, or nothingness, the lack of anything, you might say, you can hear them howl that word at the moon in their struggle to somehow break through our ordinary consciousness that depends upon words and letters. In what Professor Park sent earlier, he has another equally eloquent way of presenting the problem that he's dealing with today. And he writes, "In Korea today, and indeed all over the world, an increasing spiritual thirst is becoming more and more evident among people of all ages and from all sectors. We are all experiencing the pressures caused by our modern way of living and are searching for ways to alleviate these stresses. As a result, we are discovering and learning about various techniques that can presumably enable us to calm our minds and or strengthen our bodies." And then he goes on to explain that in fact any and all of these are certainly capable of helping us to feel better, but then poses the greater goal, or the more difficult question, is feeling better really what we should be striving for, or perhaps is it that we should become ever more serious in our struggle to understand the basic causes of human suffering, to get beyond those of the visible body and its functions, and to see instead the deeper invisible elements that he was speaking of in the second half of his talk. I think perhaps it's not useful for me to say very much more, but rather to turn this stage back to Fred, who I believe will open the floor for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen. So the floor is indeed open for questions, either to Professor Park or to Professor Hardacre, or to both of them, or among ourselves. Maybe your chairs could go to the front.
I'll get this one, and actually, if one of you wants to take that green chair.
You can sit in the...
Yeah.
So we can have a conversation 15 minutes or so before we come to a conclusion. So the floor is open.
I've got a question I'd like to pose, if that's okay. I'm always curious to get this understanding of the essence, to have this realization. By what means does meditation help this? I mean, what good is meditation in realizing essence? I seem to understand that that's kind of the suggestion, that what if one just sits, and this happens? Why?
Well, I understand. There are two kinds of meditation. One is in terms of 몸짓. 몸짓 is a kind of gesture. So sitting in a meditation hall, very quiet, facing at the wall, and then crossing the legs, making the spinal, bone upright, and breathing. And then koan is given, and then why did Buddha come to Asia? What's the purpose? Who am I? There are, they say 1,700 koans. That's the core. That's the atmosphere. But according to my theory, I do not give any credit to those things. 0. F. Yeah. No matter how excellent, Why? External, visible behavioral gesture can be manipulated. Yeah. If you do this, you can be in peace, while you're suffering, your stomach trouble, family trouble will be gone. Yeah, this kind of. That's not Zen. That's not what Buddha, Bodhidharma taught. I don't know who Bodhidharma is, but to have a communication, I use his name. Actually, the fundamental purpose is to be free from 몸짓. That means gesture, right? External gesture. To be free. If everybody is a being of karma, that means thinking, speaking, or any action, then there is a created karma. Yeah. So everybody is a karmic being. Yeah. And then if we are trained to do certain behavior, let's say seek quiet place and facing against the wall, crossing legs, uprighting the spinal cord, and then breathing and inhalation and exhalation. There are various the teaching. No matter how well you did, no credit. Now, the credit you can get is to be free from those karmic gestures. Yeah. So sitting down, one day, 1 week, or 10 years, or 30 years. I have many friends, Zen masters, who have said 40 years of long the meditation. According to my system, no credit. 40 years meditation, sitting meditation, without sleeping. Some Zen monks in Korean monastery. Yeah, Korean monks are really diligent. I give a credit. Yeah, but I don't know. Real credit could be given to them. Yeah. Real credit could be obtained. Not all those behavior. That those behaviors are kind of 몸짓. Yeah, 몸짓 also. So what we are supposed to do in terms of the meditation is to be free from the karmic world of 몸짓. Yeah, make it stop. And then as soon as we made it stop karmic 몸짓, and then our 몸, 몸 has 2 meanings I told you. Yeah, begins to function properly. Yeah. And then our consciousness, not the eighth consciousness, seventh consciousness, and sixth consciousness, not all those consciousness. Let's say just Buddha nature. Buddha nature can become comfortable and functions. Yeah, I think that's the way. But nowadays, world is really, the world of motion. Yeah. Everywhere we can see world of motion, not the world of mom. I say, in terms of as I told you, I am now teaching a course called Buddhist Christian Dialogue. Two texts are chosen. One is New Testament, Gospel of John, and another text is Diamond Sutra. And we are reading and the debating, and I have a difficulty with students who are fundamentalist Christian Christian church. They have a difficulty to but gradually, every year I have such an experience. But gradually, they begin to understand what I am trying to say. I have a really strong position to eliminate any denominational, pride. I am a Christian, so my religion is better than you. I hope Buddhist, especially Zen Buddhist or Sung-bae. In Korea, Sung-bae is very important. Sung-bae seems, the disciple. Therefore, me is superior to others. All bullshit. That's wrong way. Yeah. Okay, so time is.
That was the first question.
Still a question then about how to break the prison of letter culture, the not meditation, not following, not chanting.
Yeah.
So as a lay just person, how can we get them to how not?
Yeah. Very important question. And also a difficult question to answer.
Yes, without word, but still, Hwadu means
The
conscious.
best answer is to use Christian expression. God will help you. That's not my yeah. And then in Buddhist world, karma. To meet a good teacher, and good friend, meditating together, something like that. Just a minute. She has.
I have a question. It's very simple and mundane question. When you teach variety of scriptures, even if you really say with Monji and so on, do you really interpret meaning of it for the students to understand? Or especially in the case of Heart Sutra, do you really interpret the phrases or sentences?
Yeah.
And so that
I did that.
I see.
Every line and every term.
That's very, very good.
The key point of my teaching, the Heart Sutra is a Zen text.
Right.
That's the Zen text.
Right.
People say Zen came to China 520, by Bodhidharma, but actually Heart Sutra is a Zen text.
Thank you.
Okay. And then
I have short two questions. One is you say invisible part is mind. Invisible part is mind. You say.
Yeah.
I don't know where my mind is in my body. Where is mind in our bodies? The second question is you have another invisible part. This is thinking.
This is what?
we have another thinking, another invisible part.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is thinking.
It is what?
Thinking. So
Thinking.
thinking. I'm sorry.
Thinking.
Yeah.
Thinking. Thinking and mind are two things. What is the relations between two things? I'm sorry, I am very poor in English. At English, I'm sorry. But
You could say it in
thinking.
Korean. You could speak it in
Can
Korean.
you say it in Korean?
Yes.
Speak Korean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I will translate.
Can I speak in Korean?
Yeah.
yes. 보이지 않는 부분이 마음도 있고 그 이외에 또 생각도 있는데 이 두 개의 관계가 어떤 관계인지 생각이 마음의 한 자격인지 아니면 이 두 개의 관계가 어떤 것인지 그것을 좀 말씀해 주시면
Yeah.
마음이 어디 있는지 하고 우리 몸에
Yeah.
그 두 가지.
Yeah. His question is about the role of mind, and then actually we have some kind of function, ability to think. So relationship between the thinking and the mind. Something. Usually, according to my understanding, there's a very subtle area. So the answer could be various according to the different discipline, different denomination, different experience, etc. But according to my understanding, relationship between the mind and thinking is a kind of mom and momtic relationship. Thinking is a phenomenon of momtic, yeah, and then mind refers to mom, yeah, and also probably this kind of example may help you. Actually, it helped me. So let me put that. A friend of mine in Korea, I was a medical student first, and a friend of mine was a really expert medical student, but he was the expert of the palm reading. Not only the palm reading, face reading, and the various. And he was a genius. So whatever he read, then he understood and practiced. And then once I invited I took him to my parents' house, where my parents' parents was a pretty wealthy person, so some kind of the villa in the deep mountain. So we stayed there, and then the villagers, they came out, very excellent, palm reader and face reader. Okay, the palm reading and face reading, has a very interesting area. I didn't study, but by my friend, I heard it. And then, in terms of face reading, there are three faces we have. Front face, yeah, and then another one is a back face. And the third one is a mind face. Yeah. Usually people make a judgmental statement after reading the front face. So your eyes are all sharp, and your nose are all symbol of the wealthy person, and your chin or your cheek, etc. Nose, etc., etc. But the more important thing is back face. Back face means when the person left, and then left something in terms of impression. So after meeting a sage, good people, after that person left, very, very, the good feeling left. Yeah, that's the back face. Yeah, person is gone, but still, given. So the third one is a mind face, and actually, mind face is more. So it's a kind of divine. Yeah. The term mind in Asian, classical Chinese document has various meaning, but many of them mind refers to in the Western culture, God. Yeah. Such a dimension. Yeah. So I don't know.
Where is my mind in my body?
Huh?
Where is my mind in my body? At heart or head? Where is mind?
Oh,
In our
as I
mind.
told you, mom has a two sides.
Yeah.
One is the mom, physical body, ordinary people recognize. But another side is a universal body. So that body is beyond the birth and death. Yeah, arising and ceasing, beyond that. So it's like it's exactly like a description of God. Yeah, in which everything is embraced.
Time for one more question.
Thank you, Professor. In Christianity, there is a special problem. Since the God is omnipresent, omnipotent, and thus supremely good, then why does evil exist? So there is a special discipline of theology to legitimize the existence of evil. So I think correspondingly, according to your theory, the Zen world is essential and the non-letter world is the true world. But why the non-true world exists? And after we get the enlightenment, after the Buddhist meditation and teaching, how do we deal with the letter culture? Because it is an indispensable ingredient of human life.
Yeah.
So I think there is some similar question corresponding to the Christian one.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. I have received many questions similar your question. Yeah, in my past life. I have 7 siblings. Yeah, and I am the last. And then my father had 2 brothers, so 3, and my grandma was there. My grandma was illiterate. She couldn't read, couldn't write, even so simple Hangul, Korean alphabet. But my grandma is the wisest person in my memory. About 40 people gathered to have a meal in various birthday party and funeral and anniversary and memorial, so very frequent gathering. And 40 the grandchildren. My grandma understand every member of the family. Illiterate lady. Yeah. So human being has such a function to be able to understand, each member's very detailed what kind of problem that girl has, or that son has, grandson has, and then very wisely helped, not taking any side. Yeah. My grandma. Yeah. In the same way, enlightened people, no ego, being free from karmic ego, right? And then embracing all people, the enlightened people knows. And then the living in the world of mom, this is actually the kind of divine, to use Western term, divine world. World of mom is a divine world. So living in such a divine world, and then all kinds of secular world are embraced. Yeah, that kind of things. Yeah. So Shubaicho and Mother Teresa, in Korea was the Isok Shinbu, Taesok Shinbu. Yeah, the story, something like that. Yeah, and then human being has such an ability to embrace everything. Yeah. Once they are free from egocentric, utilitarian way of thinking, value system, and then it's possible. Yeah.
So I think we've had a wonderfully stimulating evening. Thanks to Professor Hardaker, Professor Park for helping us to think about these issues both in words and non-words. So thank you all for coming, and please stay around if you'd like to talk to Professor Park for a little longer. We'll stay.